The town of Briarwood was quiet, with neat houses and neatly trimmed lawns. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and any hint of scandal was quickly whispered through the streets. Sarah Collins, a 28-year-old high school English teacher, was an active part of this community. Her husband, David Collins, 32, worked as a lawyer at a prestigious firm in the city. Together, they appeared to have the perfect life. Sarah and David had been married for 4 years. At first, their relationship had been a whirlwind of love and excitement. They had met during college, both ambitious and driven. However, as time passed, the spark that had initially bound them together began to dim. David's work became all-consuming, and Sarah, once vibrant and social, found herself spending long hours at home. The couple's conversations often revolved around trivial matters, and their time together became increasingly limited. Despite the outward appearance of a happy marriage, Sarah felt increasingly isolated. She yearned for the connection and attention that had once filled her life. The emotional distance between her and David became harder to ignore, and as the months passed, Sarah started questioning her choices. She longed for someone that could fill the void. Enter Lily Taylor, a 19-year-old university student who had just moved into the house next door. Lily was quiet and reserved, with dark hair and penetrating eyes that seemed to reflect a sadness far beyond her years. She had moved to Briarwood with her family, looking forward to her first year at the nearby university. Unlike Sarah, who was known for her gregarious personality, Lily kept to herself, preferring books and quiet walks in the neighborhood. The first time Sarah met Lily, she had been outside watering her garden. The young girl had waved shyly from her porch, and Sarah, ever the friendly neighbor, had made her way over to introduce herself. At 19, Lily was younger than Sarah by nearly a decade, but there was something about her presence that intrigued Sarah. They spoke briefly about the neighborhood, and Sarah offered to show her around town. As Sarah spent more time with Lily, she found herself drawn to the girl's quiet nature and intelligence. Lily was unlike anyone Sarah had ever known. She seemed so much older than her years, with a certain maturity that was both calming and unsettling. The more they talked, the more Sarah found herself confiding in Lily. She told her about the frustrations in her marriage and the sense of emotional neglect she had been feeling. For Lily, Sarah became a kind of surrogate mentor. She admired Sarah's wisdom, her beauty, and the way she seemed to have everything in life. Lily's own family life was complicated. Her parents were busy and often distant, and she felt out of place in her new surroundings. The attention and warmth Sarah gave her filled a void in Lily's life as well. It was during a late afternoon meeting at Sarah's house that the nature of their relationship began to change. The two women were sitting on the couch discussing poetry and literature, a shared passion. Sarah was explaining her thoughts on a particularly moving poem when Lily suddenly leaned closer, her eyes fixed on Sarah's face. The distance between them felt charged, and Sarah's heart began to race in a way she hadn't felt in years. Lily had always been reserved, but there was something different in the way she was looking at Sarah now. It was as if she was studying her, searching for something. Sarah, sensing the change in the air, felt an unsettling pull toward Lily that she could not explain. As they continued talking, their hands brushed, and an electric jolt passed between them. It was subtle but undeniable. Sarah quickly withdrew her hand, a surge of guilt and confusion washing over her. She had been married for 4 years, and the idea of betraying her husband with someone, especially a young woman, felt wrong. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that something deep within her was awakening. Lily, for her part, seemed unaffected, though a soft smile lingered on her lips. In the weeks that followed, their interactions continued. They would meet under the pretense of discussing books or going for walks in the neighborhood, but there was always an underlying tension. It wasn't long before they shared their first kiss. It happened one evening when Sarah invited Lily over for tea. They were sitting on the couch, a safe distance apart, when Lily leaned in unexpectedly, brushing her lips against Sarah's. The kiss was brief, but electrifying. Sarah froze, her mind racing. This wasn't supposed to happen. Lily pulled away, her eyes wide with anticipation. "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered. But Lily shook her head, a quiet confidence in her gaze. "No need to apologize," Lily murmured softly. "I think we both know what just happened." It was then that Sarah realized the true danger of her feelings. She had crossed a line she could never uncross. Yet, as much as she tried to suppress the growing attraction, she could not deny that she was captivated by Lily's presence, by the way she made Sarah feel alive again. From that moment, the relationship between Sarah and Lily transformed. What began as a friendship, albeit a close one, quickly became something much more. They started sneaking around, meeting in secret whenever they could. Sometimes it was in Sarah's home while David was at work. Other times it was at a nearby park or cafe, where they could talk freely without fear of being seen. For Sarah, the affair with Lily was an escape from the monotony of her marriage. It wasn't just the physical attraction she felt toward the young woman. It was the emotional connection. Lily listened in a way that David no longer did. She understood Sarah in a way that no one else ever had. But as Sarah became more involved with Lily, she began to feel torn. Guilt gnawed at her conscience, and the consequences of her actions were never far from her mind. She loved David, at least, she used to. But Lily made her feel alive in ways that David never could anymore. Meanwhile, Lily's feelings for Sarah grew stronger with each passing day. She had developed a deep attachment to Sarah, viewing her as someone who could offer a sense of purpose and stability in her otherwise chaotic life. Sarah was her escape, her refuge from the world that often seemed cold and unfeeling. As their secret meetings continued, Lily's attachment began to turn into something more obsessive. She began texting Sarah constantly, demanding her attention and reassurance. Sarah, caught in a whirlwind of emotions, found herself caught between the two worlds, the life with David that she had known for years, and the passionate, dangerous connection she shared with Lily. As the affair progressed, cracks began to form in Sarah's marriage. David, though initially oblivious to his wife's growing emotional distance, began to notice the changes in her behavior. She became more distracted, less engaged in conversations, and her late nights spent out of the house became more frequent. One evening, as Sarah returned home after another secret meeting with Lily, David confronted her. His eyes were filled with confusion and hurt. "Sarah, what's going on with you? You've been so distant lately. I don't know what to think anymore." Sarah hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never wanted to hurt David, but she knew that the truth could no longer be hidden. She opened her mouth to speak, but found herself unable to form the words. Instead, she walked away from him, her thoughts in turmoil. David was not one to give up easily. He spent the following days scrutinizing Sarah's behavior more closely, watching for any signs of infidelity. His suspicions grew, and one night, he finally confronted her again. "I found the messages, Sarah. I know what's been going on." The betrayal in his voice struck Sarah like a dagger. Her heart sank, and for the first time, she realized just how far gone their relationship had become. The confrontation between David and Sarah was nothing short of explosive. In the heat of the argument, David stormed out of the house. He was enraged, hurt, and confused. Sarah, feeling both guilty and relieved, sat on the couch, her hands trembling. She had never wanted to hurt David, but in that moment she knew that the affair with Lily had changed everything. It was at that moment that Lily appeared, standing in the doorway. She had overheard the argument and, in her usual calm manner, walked into the house. Sarah's mind was in turmoil, but Lily approached her, gently taking her hand. She whispered softly, "You don't need him. You don't need anyone but me." Sarah looked at Lily, her emotions swirling. But before she could respond, the front door slammed open and David entered the house, his face pale with fury. The rest of the events unfolded in a blur of confusion and fear. In a fit of rage, David attacked Lily, blaming her for everything that had gone wrong in his life. The confrontation quickly escalated into violence, and in the heat of the moment, Lily, panicked and desperate, grabbed a nearby object, an old heavy vase, and struck David in the head. Sarah froze as David fell to the floor, blood pooling around him. It was too late to save him. The man she had once loved was gone. And now, with Lily standing beside her, blood on her hands, there was no turning back. The police arrived shortly after, and the scene was chaotic. Sarah, overcome with grief and guilt, was arrested along with Lily. The case became a local sensation, the tragic tale of a woman's affair leading to the brutal murder of her husband. The trial that followed was a spectacle. Sarah, once a beloved teacher in Briarwood, now stood as a defendant, her life shattered by her own actions. The town was divided. Some sympathized with Sarah, seeing her as a victim of her circumstances, while others condemned her for the betrayal of her husband and the subsequent murder. Lily, too, faced charges. The prosecution argued that the murder had been premeditated, While the defense claimed it had been a crime of passion, a result of the intense emotional strain both women had been under. The courtroom was filled with tension as each side presented its case. In the end, both Sarah and Lily were convicted of manslaughter. The judge took into account the emotional turmoil they had both experienced and the tragic circumstances surrounding the crime. Sarah was sentenced to 12 years in prison, while Lily, due to her young age and lack of prior offenses, was given a reduced sentence. As the years passed, the town of Briarwood slowly moved on, but the memory of the crime remained etched in the minds of its residents. For Sarah, the loss of her husband and the consequences of her actions would haunt her for the rest of her life. In the quiet town of Briarwood, life moved on. But for Sarah and Lily, their lives would never be the same. The affair that had seemed like an escape had ultimately led to tragedy, proving that sometimes the most dangerous passions can leave the deepest scars. This true crime case explores the dangers of emotional isolation and the devastating consequences of infidelity. In a seemingly perfect world, a young woman's affair with her teenage neighbor ignited a series of tragic events, ultimately leading to the murder of her husband. It is a stark reminder of how quickly the illusion of perfection can unravel when secrets are kept and desires are left unchecked.